I was living in Dakar, Senegal with my father, a geologist, and my mother, a biologist, when Lucy was found in Ethiopia in 1975. At 3.2 million years old, she was the oldest hominid known at the time. Lucy was named after the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds that the international team directed by Maurice Tayeb was listening to while working in the Sahara region. There was a lot of excitement around the world about the discovery. Even my grandfather from his village in the south of France sent an article published in the newspaper Le Monde to my mother in Dakar about Lucy's discovery. Lucy looked somewhat like a common chimpanzee, but the pelvis and leg bones were almost identical in function with those of modern humans, showing with certainty that she had walked upright. A lot of important discoveries in paleontology were made in the 70s in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya. The possibility that humankind was born in Africa was emerging. There were conferences in Dakar, Senegal, with renowned archaeologists. Today, the oldest hominid known is approximately 7 million years old, much older than Lucy. But Lucy remains one of the most beautiful pages in the story of humankind. As a child, I always heard about geological times, fossils, continental drift. When I lived with my parents, the house was full of amazing rocks from everywhere, books about evolution, paleontology, geology, and biology. When I was going to the desert with my parents, I could almost see the landscape changing before me. My father would explain how the landscape looked millions of years before us and how it would look in the future. This is my father's hammer. As a geologist, he was using it all the time. And I saw this hammer with him in the south of France, in different countries, and of course in Mauritania when we went with him to the Sahara desert. And he was using it pretty much all the time, and especially when he was taking pictures of geological details. He would put the hammer on the rock to give the scale. So this hammer is now here, and I'm happy to have it. This is one of my father's field trip notebook, and he was sketching a lot when he was on a field trip. He was sketching the landscapes around him, and he was very good at drawing, and his hand was very sure, and his lines were very pure. It was never, when he was starting something, he never stopped, and I was always very impressed by what he could do. There are many of those notebooks, and I have this one in San Diego. Some are about Mauritania in Africa, and some are about other countries. And they are all the same format, and they have this old used cover with fabric. I like them very much. And sometimes I would put some Polaroids. This is some sand from Mauritania, and there are many different sand in Mauritania, different colors. And this one is orange, found next to the town of Shingeti. It's very, very soft and very, very thin grains. You can find different colors from white to fairly dark. And this one is especially beautiful under the sun. Shines and gives an amazing colors to the landscapes. These are pieces of wood found in the desert. They are very beautiful, their shapes, but They are also very, very rare. Maybe we should not have taken them, I don't know, but each time we went to the desert in Mauritania with my parents, we would take wood from Senegal, where we were living, because there is no wood in the desert. And when you find a piece of wood like that, you can tell maybe it's very, very, very old. So in fact, when we were making some fire, what we would do with the fire we were taking from outside, from Senegal, we were never using the wood from the Sahara. And I think it was the same problem the Tuareg had. They were making sometimes some fire, but you could tell they were always very, very small fire, like you use the minimum wood as possible to boil water, or what you need, just use the minimum of it. So it's so precious. This is something extremely precious in the desert. This is a Quranic tablet, and it comes from Shingeti, one of the towns in Mauritania that we visited with my parents. And one day, my mom met a man in the village, and he seemed to be bothered by the sun. He was fairly old. He looked old anyway, and my mom proposed to him her sunglasses, and he accepted, and he was very, very happy, and invited us to have some tea at his house. And after the tea, we saw in the sand next to his house some of those tablets planted in the sand. And in fact, they may have belonged to his children, because they are the tablets they use when they go to school, and they learn the Quran on those tablets. The Quran is written here. Sometimes it's not even them who write the Quranic verses, but they learn with those tablets. And he saw that my mom was interested, and immediately gave one to her. Which now, if I think about it, maybe was not the best thing to do, to accept it, because it was really an everyday tool for the children. And like my mom says, it's very interesting, the sunglasses were tinted in violet, purple violet, and he didn't seem to be bothered by the color at all. It was very, very happy to wear them. This is a Stromatolite. It is the oldest fossil found on Earth. This Stromatolite was found next to Attar, a town in Mauritania. And this one is 3 billion years old and lived at a time when the Sahara was covered by the ocean. And this one looks like, wow. This is a Bface. This one is almond shaped and is approximately 250,000 years old. This Bface was found laying on the ground in the desert in Mauritania as if it was just made. And we would find that kind of Bface pretty often in Mauritania. There are some sites, and very well-known sites now, at the time less well-known, 30 years ago, and now people sell them. They find them and sell them, because now there are some tourists in Mauritania. It was not the case when we were going there. We would see nobody there except Tuaregs and people in little villages. These are two little hatchets from the Neolithic era. We find many of these directly on the sand, and I remember this big white sand dune, and the name is Darwin and Me, and it's not very far from Attar in Mauritania, and they were just laying on the white sand. So when I was a teenager, I would go to Mauritania with my family, and I would take the old Land Rover and load it with water and gas and all the food we needed. And we were gone for a few days there, not knowing much about the terrain or anything. Sometimes when it was very remote, because my father never hesitated to go to remote places, we would hire a guide, a Tuareg guide, and it was the most unusual encounter because we did not speak Tuareg, he did not speak French. The only possibility was to talk with signs and drawings on the sand and smiles and pointing directions and of course names. Like my father would say, okay, we want to go to Wadan, and Wadan is the same name. It's the Mauritanian name of the town, so that he knew. There was a lot of confidence. He would stay with us, sometime a few days, and my mom was. We were talking together, and she was saying, "Do you remember when sometimes after a night in the desert, we were sleeping under the stars on our little bed, folding bed? We would wake up, and the guide was there and reviving the fire, the little fire, wood fire, and sometimes other Tuaregs were there, and they were talking together. The Tuaregs were stopping by." They were usually with their caravans, the camels, their wives, their kids, but only the men would come and talk to our guide. Or sometimes, if we were not with the guide, they would just come next to the fire and just wait very quietly until we woke up. And they were there before dawn. And then we would share coffee, or they would make some tea, and that's it. And we would share that strange and intense moment, and then they were gone, and we were alone again.